Welcome back, everybody. So good to be gathered with you in a new format for the afternoon. How's the morning been so far? How's the day been so far? Yay! Yeah, love it. What about a delicious Mabu Mabu muesli bar? Didn't that do the lolly job? Too modern. Right, I'm just going to have to think about that. It's whole grains and everything. I don't know. So just a reminder, I'm Danny Vallant. I'm a local food journalist. I'm not plugging myself, but a few people have asked about my podcast. It's called Dirty Linen. I feel like each of you should be on it at some point because everybody I talk to is doing such interesting things. So, we can continue conversations in that format as well. So I love doing panels, especially when the guests are incredibly awesome. So let's introduce you all. I'll start with Josh. Put your hand up, Josh. All right. Josh Collings is the co-founder and managing director of the Acres and Acres Cooperative, aiming to empower the local community to grow and sell produce. Josh sits on the Group for Albury Wodonga Food Network and Rebound Committee and was part of the Community Recovery Committees for Cudgewar and Upper Murray 2020-21. Josh has been a filmmaker and photographer in the creative industries for most of his career and has always had a socially conscious project running alongside him. From community art galleries, the music director at a community art and music festival, end of the line, every aspect was community driven. With Vic Health funding, made sure my notes had that in it, Josh and his team are scaling up their incredible work at Acres and Acres to deliver the future healthy food hub in Corryong to support local and resilient food systems. On you, Josh. Danielle, put your hand up. Danielle Galagos is currently Professor of Nutrition and Dietetics and Director of the Woolworths Centre for Childhood Nutrition Research. As a social nutritionist, her work focuses on the intersection between social justice and nutrition. Her current research investigates how all Australians, irrespective of where they live or how much money they earn, can have access to healthy food. She's particularly interested in household food insecurity and how families can put food on the table without being shamed, and in food sovereignty models. Awesome. Danielle, I've only known Danielle for 2 days, but she seems to always have interesting earrings as well. Yeah, I love them. Tan Trong. Hey, Tan. Fruit nerd. Tan Trong is a produce expert who grew up in his parents' fruit and vegetable store. He began his career as a national fruit buyer at Coles supermarkets before joining the family business, the Melbourne Fresh Produce Wholesale Market, and has travelled the world sourcing exotic fruits and vegetables for Australian consumers. At home, on stage, that's good, isn't it? In front of a camera or with a mic, oh, that's good. Tan is known as the fruit nerd for his wealth of knowledge and his desire to educate. Tan's passion as an authority and expert on fruit and veg extends to his energy and plethora of fruit shirts. And there is a plethora of fruit shirts on the stage today. So we are a very tasty fruit salad. And I don't know, you guys, you're a black grape, Josh, and you are a lychee. We are delicious, basically. Did we give Tan a clap? Shu Wen, you've already heard from. Welcome back to the stage, that you know very well. Health economist, food policy expert whose work seeks to inform on effective and equitable incentives to discourage unhealthy and encourage healthy dietary choices to help improve population and planetary health and well-being, particularly among the vulnerable. We are here, I think this event has been so well organised because we've all been thinking about lived experience and what we bring to our conversations in the workshops that have just preceded this panel. And this topic here is about personal stories, lived experience, how it drives us, how it creates opportunities and challenges, and how it impacts our work. It's a very timely discussion, like always, but it particularly slots so well into the program today. For me, when we think about that, those personal stories, lived experience, it opens up vulnerable conversations, a real awareness of what we carry with us, and perspective. I mean, all the juicy stuff, right? So we've got only about 45 minutes, and we are going to welcome questions from the audience as well. So put those through on Slido, and we will get to them. Let's start with you, Tan. Go all the way to the other side of the stage. Tell us about yourself, the work that you do, and how your personal lived experience plays into it.
Sure. So I don't know if I'm too close, but I'll try to be as loud as I can.
Yeah, everyone be right up on the mic. That's what I've heard from Daniel.
So my name's Tan. I'm a fruiterer. I sell fruit for a living. And you could say that my alter ego is the fruit nerd. I want people to have great fruit experiences. I want people to eat produce that they love so they come back for more. That's my whole mantra. Yet when you are in a fruit store or a supermarket, I feel as though we are given a false sense of agency that we know which is the best produce to select for ourselves. But we have never been trained. We have never been technically taught how to pick produce. And so I feel as though it's my responsibility as a fruiterer to guide people to have the best tasty experience. Not one that looks pleasing, but one that tastes good. Because I truly believe that if we enjoy our produce experiences, we'll come back for more. And whether that's through making us more nourished, whether that's to make us more healthy, I feel as though taste for me is the most important thing. And it's because of my lived experience. When I was a kid, I grew up in a fruit store, and I feel as though I hated it. And I hated it because I never saw my parents. And and it wasn't until later in life that I realized that when I grew up and I worked for Coles that, yes, there was a lot of produce, but a lot of the produce I wouldn't eat myself. And I wondered why that was the case. And that's a very, very long story. But in essence, I wanted to be somebody who nourished people the way that I grew up, where my parents fed me amazing, tasting produce. And for instance, everybody was just outside in the tea room, and I saw a box of plums. But we so subconsciously look at that piece of produce without thinking. Where did it come from? Did it come from near the Murray River? Has it been stored in cold storage? Was there speckled dots on it? Could you smell the aroma through the skin? It's not that we should be thinking about these things all the time, but I feel as though in my job as a fruiterer and what I want to achieve in my lifetime and in the industry, it's to allow all of you to have better produce experiences. And I'm probably talking too long, so I'm going to stop, Danny.
No, not at all. I mean, I think when we think about lived experience, we try to become conscious of what we bring. We start to realise that we know things we didn't know. I mean, did you feel that about fruit, that you somehow had absorbed all this knowledge about even to smell the plum, to think about that, or how to choose a great pineapple? Were there things that you didn't know that you knew?
I want to say yes, because it was learning through absorption. And I used to sit in my dad's truck and drive around to all the lower socio-demographic suburbs of Melbourne. And I've had a very privileged life. You know, my family were very poor when they were younger. My parents were immigrants from Vietnam and came here with nothing. And by the time that I went to high school, I went to a private school. And so I feel as though I've lived two lives. And certainly, you know, when I was a kid, we talk about shame, and Danielle had that in her bio, And when I was young, my mum used to cut me mangoes and eat it with rice because that was all we had. And I thought it was amazing because I knew that the mangoes were ones that my dad picked, and they were the most amazing Kensington Pride mangoes that you could find. And if there was 100 growers in the market, my dad would search 90 growers and pick the best one. And I didn't want to tell people that that's what I had for dinner. But now that I think about it, I'm really proud of it. But yeah, it's a strange thing. And certainly I think I absorbed a lot. And it's not to say that, you know, having worked for Coles, I don't think they have, you know, that there is terrible produce. I think there is both good and bad. And I think if we, both from a bottom-up and a top-down approach, whether it's policy, whether it's the supermarkets, whether it's Josh in the co-op, we all can play a role to helping move the food system in the direction we want. And for me and my philosophy, it's to have more tasty experiences, because I think that's what drives us to eat better and eat more better, not just eat more volume, which is unfortunately how the capitalist system works.
Absolutely. I think we can all want to eat fruit because, you know, we've been told it's good for us, but if it's not tasty, you're not going to make the whole fruit salad, right? And I remember, you know, just a story from each of my parents about fruit. So my dad's a Holocaust survivor. He came here as an 11-year-old from the Czechoslovakia at the time. And whenever we go near the Vic Market, he talks about his first oranges, how his father would go around the market looking for the juiciest, best oranges. And I can't remember how much it cost, but it seemed like a miracle to my father that you could buy something so delicious for a handful of coins. My mum grew up either side of the war, Second World War, in England, and she speaks about her first banana with similar rapture. That it was just like this very strange miracle that you could, this strange bendy thing that you could eat and unwrap, and it's just a taste that she'd never experienced before. So I think there is so much wonder in food. Danielle, might be a slightly hard act to follow.
Sorry, Danielle.
But please, let's hear from you with your lived experience.
I'm very humbled by the stories I've heard so far. You know, my story is of white privilege. I grew up in Canberra. I grew up in the 70s, so I remember space food sticks and surprise peas and the Monier electric wok. Very plain food from in a working class family. And I was the first in family to go to university. I had no choice but to go to university. So while I wanted to be a chef, my dad said, no, you need to do science and I want you to do engineering. And I said, Dad, I'm getting straight C's in math. That's not going to happen. I was allowed to continue to do food studies in year 12, and I went on to become a dietitian. And I fell into academia. I literally fell into academia. And I have been gathering stories on my journey because I am a white woman of privilege, and I have a responsibility to amplify voices, not to be the voice, but to amplify the voices of those who we can't hear. And so my mantra is always now about how can I work with those that haven't had the same opportunities that I have had to actually amplify their voices so that we can really hear them loud and clear with a very strong social justice agenda. So for me, it's always been about the food, but food is so intensely political that it's also about the social systems and structures around food. And so, you know, as food activists, we all need to be also social activists and to really be advocating for housing, for, you know, adequate income, for opportunities, for livelihood building. That's what, you know, we should all be about, because that's where food can lead us. And, you know, food insecurity is not about food. Food insecurity is about the social conditions in which people are living. And so I'm using my power as an academic to try to make a difference. As I said, fell into academia, literally fell into academia. My PhD is in sociology and cultural studies. It's called Mapping Ethno-Foodscapes in Australia, or Stir-Fry Ravioli with Chips. I came to food through identity, through cultural identity, because, as we've mentioned across this, yesterday and today, food is about culture, it is about self, it is about identity. It reaches into the very being essence of who we are, and we can use food to express ourselves in so many different ways, and we need to give everybody that opportunity.
Wow, I love it. I interview chefs, yeah, absolutely. I interview chefs in my work as a food journalist all the time, and so many of them have that story. Like I loved cooking, I loved food, but I was, the path was laid out before me. I had to go to university, but there's something about food when you connect with it that just draws you back. And as you show, you may not become a chef, but you're working with food, and I think not everybody works with food and then uses it as an opportunity to create change, really big structural change that you're doing. So yeah, all power to you as well. Shuwen, we've already heard, really eloquently from you about, some of the struggles that you had in taking on the role of leader. And I found that really inspiring, just to think about, how that more shoulder to shoulder sense of leadership, where it's about bringing people with you and creating opportunities, and strength together, looking at the things that we can all offer and perhaps, the deficiencies that we bring with us as well. We didn't hear much about you from your early life and what took you into this work. So would you mind sharing some of that with us?
Sure. Yeah, okay. So I'm now based in the US, but I was born and raised in Singapore. And I left Singapore when I was about 19 to go to the US for college. But growing up in Singapore, I was born in the late 70s. I just basically told you all how old I am. And this was a time, growing up there in the 80s, was a time of really fast growth in Singapore, economic growth in Singapore. And I experienced it. I lived all of it, right? My family was very middle income. My parents, neither of them went to college, but worked hard, and were also lucky in terms of when they were building their careers, right? To be able to be doing that during a time of huge economic boom in the country, which afforded my brother and I a very privileged life. I've not experienced food insecurity myself, and so that wasn't something I guess I connected with, in terms of my lived experience. But I do, over the years, in terms of the work I've done, really think it's such an important thing to try to address. And even though I have never experienced it myself, and I want to acknowledge that, just the strength and the courage of people who have experienced it and continue to, and sort of their resiliency in the face of difficulty. But back to my story. So for me, actually, my path was more through policy. I had an amazing experience towards the end of high school, actually after high school, before I started college, with the opportunity to work in the Prime Minister's office in Singapore for several months. And I saw the power of policy and how it could really affect change at a population level. And I think that really drove me to in my studies, center policy as an important way to make change. And I did not think about food or nutrition at that time. I knew by the time I started graduate school that I knew I wanted to do something in the space of health that had implications for health. And I kind of stumbled upon kind of the food and nutrition space. I caught myself reading a lot around chronic disease issues, and dug deeper and realized one of the major root causes were diets. And so the importance of really trying to improve diets. And I happened to have been, again, very lucky, to have been at a university, even though I was in a health policy program, I happened to be in a university that also had a very strong department of nutrition. I did not choose that university because of the nutrition program, because I didn't have that in my head, that notion in my head at that time. But I was very lucky that it was one of the top departments in the country, in the US. So I reached out to people in the department and started collaborating with faculty members in that department and started moving into the food and nutrition space with economics and policy lens. So that's how I ended up doing the work I'm doing. And it's been a journey and a joyful one. I also say that, being a Singaporean, we love food. We think about food all the time, like we are planning the next meal while we're eating. And we have a pretty rich and vibrant food culture because of sort of the different backgrounds and cultural mixes we have in Singapore. But Singapore also doesn't produce most of its food. Most of its food is imported. I think we had a conversation about this, Danny. And so it's been interesting for me because, I connect with the food and the dishes, but growing up, I don't think I actually ever really thought about where did this food come from. I didn't think about, where it was grown, who grew it, what conditions, they might have been living in. And it's really been through sort of this work that I've started doing through my studies and also interacting with more people in this field that I've been learning so much more. And it's kind of been a full circle in some ways. But yeah, I feel very fortunate. It's been really wonderful to also hear about all of your experiences. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. We would love to, I knew we'd start running out of time as soon as we started. We've still got time, and we definitely have time for your questions. So please head to slido.com and put in the code that it's up there. Oh, if you can't, so I'll just read it out in case it's hard to see at the back, but go to slido.com and the code is 1254792, 1254792, and then you'll be able to tap in a question and it will magically appear for me up here on the stage to put to our esteemed panellists. I guess, by simply having this conversation, we're saying that it's okay to be ourselves, to bring ourselves into the work that we do. But of course, that's not always easy, and we don't always have insight into, every aspect of ourselves that we're bringing and how perhaps that's perceived by the people that we're working with or collaborating with. I mean, Danielle?
Oh, look, what I want to say is that, in every encounter that I do or am in, I try to be deeply reflexive about that encounter, and I really try to practice humility, because I have one type of expertise. I have my own lived experience, but I have lots of learned expertise, and that's only one version of expert in the world. And I need to partner with people who have lived expertise about their own lives so that we can together create something new and exciting. So we've been doing interviews for Feeding Families in Tough Times, and one of the mums that we've interviewed, this brilliant woman who's got a Facebook page with over 1,000 followers for budget recipes. She cooks lentils from scratch, but is really struggling. And she said to me, Danielle, I do the tea bag trick. And I go, what's the tea bag trick? I don't know what the tea bag trick is. And she goes, no, you have one tea bag, it lasts a whole day so you can feed your kids. And, that provides me with the insight into the lived experience of food insecurity every day that predominantly women, but also, mums and dads as well, are going through. And without that, it's just, for me, it would be just an exercise in, compiling the evidence and talking about it. Whereas with that lived expertise about their own lives, I can actually amplify that and really, get people to sit up and listen.
Yeah, I guess it's also you're giving that sort of experience a platform, and I think, was it ravioli and chips? So even, titling something like that, it really... it gives value to some of the other ways that people move through and experience the world. So, it's very thought-provoking. Tan, what about you? What do you have you felt that you know, you talk about the fruit nerd as a persona. Like, do you feel like you're playing a role? Do you feel like you're bringing your whole self? You know, how much do you allow yourself to reveal or be vulnerable with this? Yeah.
No, look, I call it my alter ego, but it's just me. Like, the fruit nerd is me. That's me in real life. I feel as though in the past, when I was very nerdy about produce, you know, people might think that I'm a wanker, like, literally. And especially in the industry I work in, it's very traditional. It still is very traditional. And I think I've changed that. I really do feel as though a lot of fruiterers now see... I'll just take it two steps back. I really believe in food history, and I believe that if you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you are today, and you will struggle to move forward into the future or affect the future. And education in produce has been very tough. I, for about 5 years, struggled to get any network or any media organisation to even accept that I wanted to do one video or one piece of educational piece about produce, because the idea of seasonality has never worked in the media. Seasonality is a marketing idea. And the fruiterers of the world have been kind of tarnished over many, many years of trying to educate consumers. And I think the lens that they went through probably wasn't well thought out. I mean, when you think about the big food organizations and how much money like Coca-Cola spend on making names on cans of Coke and engaging consumers, produce really suffers. The only thing that I can imagine is probably something that Vic Health actually sponsored, which was the bananas, banana ad. That's probably one of the only ads that I remember. And I think if we think about the pain points that people have in produce and we focus on that, and I was very lucky that my first ever video for ABC was avocados, and that we all have had a bad avocado experience before. And not too long ago, avocados cost us mortgages, right? But, you know, I feel as though if we can address those pain points and if we engage consumers in the right way, then we can bring back life in something that is almost lifeless. And I see produce as being alive, but a lot of people don't see it like that. And the angle at which we celebrate produce, if we just for a second remove ourselves and unlearn what we have learned our whole lives and think of it as something different, I really do believe that we can enjoy produce in a way that we used to when our aunties in their backyards had apricots that smelt so wonderful. And, you know, like my dad, a mango that would suffocate you in the car. That kind of experience, right? So, yeah, I've forgotten what the question was, Danny, but I hope I answered it.
Absolutely. I mean, the image that came to me just then was of picking a white peach off a tree and biting it, and it's warm from the sun and the juice running down my arm. So, I mean, that is the kind of fruit experience that makes you want to have the next piece. And yeah, it's about that connection. It's about that sensory experience. And of course, it's about it being completely delicious. And
sorry, Danny. Yeah, to answer your question, yeah, no, the fruit nerd is me. Whether I reveal all, yes and no. I feel as though I'm always myself, but I don't feel as though I'm always revealing everything. But I do believe that the truth will set us free, and that's why I've probably said more about the industry than anybody has in terms of negative comments about the industry. In my last video, I talked about how the industry picks stone fruit backwards, and there's not one fruiterer or anybody in the industry who would ever say that, because they only want you to buy the produce and they don't want to face the reality that we focus on aesthetics and shelf life far more than flavour. And I don't feel as though it's a negative in saying that. I feel as though if we just lay everything out on the table, we'll accept that some things do need to keep on the shelf. We just can't eat everything within a day or two. But we also need to just kind of face the fact that some of the flavours in fruits aren't going to be as they are in the backyard of a tree. And so I don't think I've revealed all, but I've revealed more than anybody I know. And I feel as though there hasn't been an authority in produce. And in order for people to really get to the truth of how our industry works, there needs to be baby steps. And I'm very careful about that because the industry is very powerful. Yeah.
Ominous, but important. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we know that fruit might be bought, but then, at least 25, 30% of food that comes into a household, sits in the fruit bowl for a while and it's eventually wasted. So that's not really, well, it's serving the economy, but it's not serving us more broadly, that's for sure. All right, Slido, you're really coming through now. So this is to all of the panel. We've only got about 5 minutes, so let's just make this a sort of lightning round, except they're really big questions, but you got this. What are key ways to shift the accessibility of fresh, local, organic produce from a privileged space to an inclusive one? Xuan, you want to pick that up? Just change the world for us right here, right now.
That is really big. Well, I don't know, but I think having, you're all fortunate here in Australia compared to, me growing up in Singapore because you actually grow food here. And I think the local agriculture and farmers are going to be so key in helping with that as well. And the organizations, many of which I hear, I believe, who are trying to connect local farmers with markets effectively, or creating markets and making those connections are going to be one important way to do that. And I believe, Josh, you're doing a lot of that work. So you should pick up from me.
Well, I'm just trying to think about how to say it. But if I was to say it in our quick experience of 2.5 years, supply seedlings, soil and education, and have it done at home. And that is the easiest way to do it, I think, so far. And we're noticing it because we're supplying seedlings and our sales and produce are going down to our core audience. So, catch 22.
I can tell you what it's not. It's not about shifting our food waste into a charitable food relief system. We've created a whole other system based around food waste that, are essentially for the poor people and other to go to and use, and they don't have access to the mainstream food system. And so it's not about repurposing wasted food.
Tan?
Was the question, how do we make local food more accessible?
Basically, how do we connect people to the food that we think perhaps would be, great? How do we make it easier for them to connect to it, to feel like it's accessible to them?
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of studies and I'm taking this very holistically, but if you look at the UK, it's completely been decimated by the supermarkets in terms of their domination. I think there are basically no bakers left, and there are very few fruit stores. And Australia's a little bit different because of the way that we're spaced out. But in short, making spaces much more easier for farmers to be able to sell their produce. So, the farmers markets we have, make it less political, make it less bureaucratic, make it easier for them to get there, and also make it easier for consumers to get there. And unfortunately, that means more car parks, literally.
New farmers need access to land urgently. It's tied up between corporate old family. There's no access. You cannot purchase land as a new farmer. That is, I see, one of the biggest problems.
Yeah, I've heard of some great farmers or landowners making land available to small farmers. Not to bang on about my own podcast, but Torello Farm on the Mornington Peninsula has made some land available to some young farmers who are farming under the Five Tails label, and I was eating their leaves like a bag of chips, like so delicious, and just exciting to give people that access and empowering them in that way. And I'd also say programs like this Stephanie Alexander Kitchen Garden are another good way of getting young hands into soil and eventually getting something on the table. Oh my God, we've got 1 minute. We've got 5 minutes. I feel like I just got a golden ticket because this next question is so important. A lot of young people express a sense of nihilism in the face of enormous problems. In such difficult and confronting work, do you all have advice on hope? And I think this is going to end up being our last question. It's a shame to not have all the other Slidos represented, but this is so big. So leave us with some hope. Shuan, let's kick off with you. How do you foster hope in such challenging work and such challenging times?
I think we should think about the good stuff as well. I mean, I agree there's a lot to be worried about, no doubt. But I think we also have a lot of strength and agency among each of us, and how do we build from that? And I think giving the youth agency is going to be a key piece, right? And not giving it to them, but allowing them to discover their agency, creating the space and the environment for them to discover and to claim their own agency is going to be really important. And that is what's going to help build hope, I think, among this upcoming generation as well. So, yeah, worked for, hopefully, I think it's true for us too. It's really no different. But I think it's about creating the spaces to let them discover their agency.
Love it. Danielle?
I have been accused of being a Pollyanna before, and being the eternal optimist. But I think that it's also about framing. I was sitting, with some friends just over the weekend, and it was all how terrible the young people are, and how disastrous it all is. I'm going, no, like we've got young people coming through who are creative, who have a different way of looking at the world, and we really need to harness that. So you are the change you can make. And, I think some of the words that have been coming through over the last couple of days are, courage, cultural memory as another one, and being curious. So I think if we can maintain our sense of curiosity, show courage and dig into our cultural memories, then there's always optimism for the future. And then, again, on the back of the last workshop, figure out how to collaborate across systems, because it's going to be that cross-systems collaboration that's going to make all the difference. So opportunities like this, when we all can get into a room together and talk to each other and genuinely talk to each other and listen, are going to be key. And I've got real hope for the future, because I think we've got some really smart people at the helm, and also emerging.
Tan, how do you create optimism and a sense of hope in what you do?
Yeah, I totally resonate with this question. Now I was studying food systems and gastronomy, and when you study food systems, you become very depressed at the state of the world, the state of the food system. My lecturer, who's now my good friend, said to me, Tan, in your lifetime, you'll probably only be able to change one thing, or maybe even only influence one person. And as long as you do that, and we all do that, we just change one thing, then we can all be a part of helping move us forward. And I think when we think about it too holistically, of course, we can't change anything, just like climate change. But if we all just focus on one thing and that we can achieve that, it's an achievable thing, that's something that we should be proud of. And that gives me hope. We can't change the world by ourselves, but we can together. So that's what gives me hope. And every single time somebody chooses a better fruit, or like a fruit that tastes good, that makes me happy. And that's what drives me. So I hope that gives you guys hope too.
That is so well said, and also an incredible lead off to what's going to be happening this afternoon. It's almost like we planned it. So thanks for being telepathic as well as optimistic, Tan. So we're going to break for lunch, and lunch will finish at 2 p.m. When we come back, you've got an awesome afternoon planned out for you. And that afternoon, I know, it's been a lot. We're absorbing a lot. We're giving a lot. But this afternoon has been planned specifically to give you energy at the crucial moment. So refuel with food, and then you'll be refueled with the activities that are to come. There's a breakout session on leadership capabilities straight after lunch. And then the panel is about the strength of collaboration. So I'll be back here with 4 incredible guests, Beck Scott from Street, Christina Zorbas from Deakin University, Guy Ratani from Permaqueer, and Tuch Ajak from United African Farm. They are all going to bring incredible perspective on collaboration, and as we've heard from Tan, that is the way we are all going to save the world. So I love it. Thank you so much to our panellists. Will you join me in celebrating them? So Josh, let's move on to you. Tell us about your lived experience and how it plays into all the very many things that you do.
Well, I actually started at a competitor's Woolworth when I was 14. It was my first job. I'd actually left home at about 14, and then that was my thing to keep me going through whilst going to school still. So it was a big deal to have a good job to start like that, and the food was pretty shit there too. So so I got experience there, and I've done a lot of different projects in my life going through, driven by passion and fantastic mentors, because that's my style of learning. So I've really held that close to how I formulate a project, and with gusto to get something complete. Although I don't know this one will ever complete. It's a life one, this one, I think. So yeah, it's my lived experience is, moving out of home early and having a taste of a food system, and then journeying around the world with incredible people, and really having a network, like learning how to network at really high levels, really fast, build amazing relationships, and then deliver like outcomes out of ideas. And that's, what I've tested and failed and failed and failed and succeeded and failed and failed and failed and done over and over again. Is this the part where I go into my lived experience of how Acres and Acres started, or is that the next question?
I reckon just smash it out now.
I'll do it. Okay. So bushfires came through our town in 2019 and wiped it out. Like, I lost my house, was our number one, my family's number one thing. And then COVID hit a couple of months later, and I lost my whole industry of filmmaking and so forth. So after the bushfires had happened, we as a family, we decided, all right, let's go. We can be victims, or we can go at this with gusto and see what's available, and make a living to go forward with that. And you don't know what situation it's going to be straight after. So we had musical instruments left and a camera, and that's it pretty much at that time. And sorry. It was that workshop. took me down a dark route. It's we stood up and said, okay, all right, I'll do a GoFundMe campaign, and we raised $50,000 in a week, and then $150,000 in 2 weeks, and then $190,000. I was like, that's enough. I can't do this anymore. And then it was for 3 months afterwards. We went and we delivered food and supplies, petrol, generators. I don't ever want to talk about generators again. And constantly, I slept on the floor of a little art gallery, wore the same clothes for 3 weeks, and like many other people in our community. And I was full on. And during that experience, I saw there's no fresh food here. All my garden survived. I have a zucchini that's a metre long, but there's nothing else. Everything's burnt. And I'm like, all right, well, if we have fresh gardens around our houses, then they're going to be more fire resistant. And I thought, okay, so this, and I just started talking about market gardens because I love growing and vegetables, and I just get everyone's like, it's too soon, Josh. It's too soon for this. And then 2 months into that, we had our first grant, formed a co-op, and 8 of our little food swap group, which we'd been running for ages, started Acres and Acres. So that's how we formed.
Wow.
Yeah. I've told that story many a times, and this is the most emotional I've been during. So, yeah.
Well, it is such a powerful story, and that part of Victoria was so devastated. we did see, and yeah, to run straight into COVID, I remember driving around Northeast Vic and I was doing, it was early March 2020, I was writing a story for The Age about bushfire recovery with a food lens, looking at, what was open, what could we do, and listening to the news of this, this mysterious pandemic. So I felt like I was a little bit empty-esky, like filling the boot with whatever I could, but also hoarding for who knows what was to come. So, I mean, to be able to so swiftly see a need and start creating solutions, Josh, it's just, it's an incredible testament to you, and I'm sure it continues to inspire a lot of people to create their own change in your community and many others. So, yeah, all power to you.
Thank you.